What's up, guys? In this video, I want to share my thoughts about skin designs in Azur. Even though my content is almost entirely centered around gameplay, the art in this game is probably the biggest reason I'm still enthusiastically playing the game, the other two being the ability to collect all the units for free, unlike many other gacha games, and the relatively little amount of time investment needed to keep up with updates. Throughout the video, I'm going to be discussing and showcasing a lot of the common elements of my favorite skins. And it can't be avoided, so I'll show some of the examples of the things I don't like as well, but I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum because my goal isn't to directly convince people to not like what they like. Especially when it comes to something like anatomy, there are times when maybe the character's torso looks a little too long, or the hands are too small. But the skin could otherwise be perfectly fine, and if you never notice the issue, you would have no problem enjoying it, and I don't want to take that away from anyone. And while anatomy is very important, I have no issue with certain aspects being exaggerated in a particular style or design or to achieve some effect. There's no better example of this than Kashino, whose milkers are bigger than her head, and some may argue it's a little bit too big and perhaps unrealistic, but I think it's fine because her character as a whole makes it work. Another thing that stands out about Kashino is that in all of her skins except for the base one, she's not really standing by herself. This is actually very important because as an empath, after seeing Anchorage in the 3D dorm jump around with her massive rack, I start to feel sorry for her lower back. There's just way too much weight on her chest for her to be moving normally, and Kashino leaning on something or just lying down in all of her skins makes it look a lot more comfy. Aside from just Kashino, there's no shortage of big-chested characters in Azur, and it is a recurring theme that all of my favorite skins for those ships feature them lying down. Some of them include FDG's swimsuit skin, Friedrich Karl's nursery skin, Baraka's skin, although she's not really the biggest, a couple of Taiho skins, and Anchorage's swimsuit skin. Them being supported by something or pressing against glass is also very nice too. And here are some examples. These poses both look comfortable and at the same time showcases the softness of the bosoms. On the other hand, skins like Mogador's swimsuit and Franklin's nurse skins that just have them standing with their huge racks looks a little bit too unbalanced for me to fully enjoy. Aside from boobs, poses and point of view play an important role in my enjoyment of a skin. Besides the aforementioned lying down poses, some of my other favorites include just straightforward standing poses seen from the front, and sitting cross-legged from a lower point of view, kind of looking up at the girl. Call me vanilla or whatever, but I don't think I will ever get tired of seeing a well-designed character from the front in all their glory. Since I specifically highlighted front poses, which are just the standard normal pose, you might have deduced correctly that I'm not as much of a fan of backshots. My issue isn't necessarily with all backshots, but more specifically Live 2D ones. I don't know if the technology just isn't there yet or it's too difficult, but anytime there's some kind of angular transition, like a turning of the face or limbs, the Live 2D animation always looks a little bit off. As a result, I have trouble fully enjoying even very popular skins like the St. Louis and New Jersey swimsuits. Even my favorite rear point of view Live 2D skin, Cheshire's white dress with the horse, looks a little bit weird in the face when she turns her head at some points. Otherwise, the skin would be perfect. I've always just chalked it up to it being a limitation of the current Live 2D technology, but after studying them in depth all these years, I think I would be fine with just the front-facing skins. But yeah, I'm not saying that I inherently dislike backshots. I'll show some examples of skins from the back that I think are amazing, but pretty much none of them are Live 2D. Another thing that I don't really like in Live 2D skins is dynamic poses. For example, Soyuz's Live 2D or Bremerton's Kung Fu skin. And I should probably mention, in case it isn't obvious, that when I say I don't like a part of the skin, I'm not writing off the entire skin. It could be a nitpick in a skin I otherwise enjoy. but I'm just using it as an example to showcase elements I prefer. With Live 2D skins, the whole point is that they move, and I always found myself preferring a neutral idle pose that goes through dynamic motions and holds dynamic poses during interactions. Using Bremerton's skin as an example, instead of having her knee lifted and being in the middle of a kick by default, which I think looks kind of tiring, I think it would be a lot better if she stood on both her legs by default, and then during some of her voice lines, lifted her leg or hit a high kick. This is a bit of an older skin, so extra interactions weren't quite a thing yet, but another solution would be to start her off in a regular pose and then make this dynamic pose one of the special interactions. As for Soyu's skin, I would have enjoyed it a lot more if the swinging was something like the login animation, and her being in this pose is the primary reason I wasn't a fan of the skin. One skin I have in mind that implements these ideas very well is the Serious Bunny Live 2D. She starts from a relatively normal seated position, and then goes through all kinds of dynamic transitions using the hoop. The transitions are extremely well done, especially for how much she moves, and is one of my favorite Live 2D skins. Aside from being in a calm neutral pose, this skin also looks correct pretty much at all times despite having some of the most dynamic movements out of all Live 2D skins, and it also doesn't have any unnecessary movements. By unnecessary movements, I'm referring to how some skins will have everything moving and swaying at all times for no real reason. In this skin, for example, she's only gently rocking back and forth on this ring, which makes sense for how it's set up. Another skin that is a good illustration of what I mean is Kazagumo's Live 2D skin. It has her hair and clothes swaying just slightly to show that there is a bit of wind as she's sitting kind of outside, but nothing that's in constant motion that shouldn't be. This is in contrast with certain skins where the character is always bouncing and the clothes make it look like they're in the middle of a tornado, even if it's an indoor setting. Basically, I appreciate it when the movements have a purpose and don't exist just because the skin can move as a Live 2D. On the topic of movements, I also think it's very important for the Live 2D actions to make sense with their voice lines, otherwise it kinda ruins the immersion for me. A very recent example of this is in Lion's Swimsuit Live 2D, where she puts up peace signs frequently with no relation to what she's saying. The peace signs make it look like she's posing for a picture, while in the voice line she's teasing you about being embarrassed to share straws with her. And for such a line, I would have preferred if she held out a drink to you with a single straw, which doesn't seem too difficult, as opposed to hitting a pose associated with young Japanese girls posing for a photo to be taken. And I'm not writing off the entire skin because of this one nitpick. I think the art is very good, but I would have definitely liked a better pose and set of actions that better reflected her voice lines. There are many other examples of Live 2D animations not really matching voice lines, for instance, doing some kind of sexy movement with a completely normal voice line. That breaks the immersion for me. I think coherency is way more important than having an animation and a voice line that would both be good on their own but don't really go well together. One last point on poses before I move on. Since the UI update, skins that have completely vertical poses, or rather orientation, have been given the short end of the stick, as opposed to before when horizontal skins didn't have much real estate in the home screen. It really sucks that you can't get a decent zoom to see both a good amount of detail but also the entire design, for instance with Unzen's swimsuit, or Cheshire's new Oath skin, just to name a couple, but there are many others. I don't know how this could be fixed. Maybe they could add an option to allow you to rotate the skin when you view it or something, but regardless, it'll be inconvenient for the home screen. Now that I've covered poses and movements, there is one last major component that I look for in skins. And that last component is not chibis, but I can appreciate a good chibi. The base skin, Kazan Chibi, was so cute with her fluffy hood and huge mech bear, which for some reason just feels so right to me compared to her skin, featuring a more casual dress, and doesn't fit quite as well with the mechanical bear. I can't quite explain it, but that's just the vibe I get. Some other chibis I really like are the Honolulu reindeer onesie, and I also really like how unique Yatsen looks in every one of her chibis. And another one is Eldritch with her floaty astronaut helmet. Now, the final piece of the puzzle for the perfect skin is expressions. For some reason, the ships with both the most variety and quality of expressions tend to be the smaller ships, with a few exceptions like Cheshire, Alsace, and Pamiet. I think we should petition to have more expressive large ships. Having a ton of different expressions adds a lot of personality to a ship and makes the most use out of the anime-style art medium. For example, an expression like this perfectly captures the amount of excitement that Longwu has and would be impossible to portray in a more realistic style. And going beyond static facial expressions, animated expressions that are well done are even more impressive. One of the times I've been most impressed with a skin was the Janus Halloween skin because of how good the live 2D facial animations were. Despite the skin not having particularly dynamic movements or special interactions, it instantly became one of my favorites due to how smoothly her expressions were animated. At the time, I thought that maybe we hit a breakthrough in live 2D technology and all the skins going forward would be this good, but it turns out this was just an exceptionally well done skin and remains possibly the best skin in the game in terms of facial animation. The only complaint I have is that they forgot to put a ring on her hand if you have her oath, which was something that was already being done regularly when this skin was released. Some other standouts in terms of facial animations are the Kasagumo Live 2D, which I just really love how she's typically in a relaxed idle pose, but then has dynamic animations of her pouring tea, or walking, or gardening via some of the interactions, as opposed to being in the middle of an action in the idle state. In summary, the important parts of what makes a good skin for me is to have ample expressions, a good pose, and then if it's animated, a relaxing idle pose with smooth animations that match the voice lines and personality of the ship. Aside from those core principles, there is a wide range of themes that I can enjoy. Now, the catalyst that caused this video to be made at this exact point in time were the 3 new oath skins that came out in the last update. I think there's no better feeling when playing Azur lane than one of your favorite ships get their oath skins, and it lives up to your expectation. This Janus oath skin is pretty much everything I could ask for, and Baltimore and Cheshire are 2 of my other favorite ships of all time as well, and that's why I felt like I gotta put my opinions out there because there's a chance they'll be manifested. At this point, I'm only really waiting for Shinano and John Bart's oath skins. I'm really surprised Shinano hasn't gotten one by now, but there's a little bit of hope in me that they're waiting for some kind of special occasion to drop the first live 2D oath skin for Shinano. This is not an expectation or prediction, just a hope that, based on her popularity amongst not only the players, but perhaps also the developers, maybe they'll animate her oath skin as a passion project of sorts. Other than that, I also want oath skins for Sela and Chapayev, and if I could be really greedy, Vanguard as well, but I think they're still relatively new, and also maybe not popular enough. I was also really happy when Anchorage and Bremerton got their oath skins, but their poses aren't my favorite, so I still typically have my favorite skins of theirs equipped instead. I really like my oath skins in a standing or a sitting, front-facing point of view. I don't think they really need some sort of special poses. I just want to see them directly from the front in all their glory. The special parts should be for the voice lines that portray the growth and the relationship between the ship and the commander. Alright, that is pretty much all I've got to say for now. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.